Hey everybody, Terry here with the Outdoor Amputee. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. Not going to be any fish catching videos, not going to be any hunting videos, although I will have a few clips. But today we're going to talk real world, what it's like being an amputee and enjoying the outdoors. I hope you'll watch to the end because I'm going to cover some of the things an amputee, like especially like myself being a bilateral amputee, can face when they're hunting, fishing, and doing outdoor activities. I think it's important, especially if you see content where somebody's an amputee, kind of give you an in-depth look at some of the things they may experience or go through all throughout the year doing different outdoor activities like hunting, kayak fishing, bank fishing, um, prepping for hunting season. So I just want to touch on those just to give you an in-depth look of some of the challenges that we face. If you already follow me, you kind of know my backstory, but if you're new to the channel and this is your first time watching, I'll just give you a quick rundown. I'm a bilateral amputee. I'm missing my right leg from the knee down, so I have a prosthetic leg, which involves a knee that is set up specifically for my activities. At the age of 1, I was fitted for a prosthetic device, and for 47 years, I have worn a prosthetic leg, an above knee prosthetic leg, on my right side. On my left side, I'm a below the knee amputee. And at the age of 15, I decided to have my foot amputated because the foot that I had was just not holding up anymore and it was not allowing me to do the activities that I wanted to do. So I elected to have the amputation so I could continue the outdoors, doing the activities that I love to do. All right, since we got that out of the way, so first thing I want to talk about is weather. As an amputee, weather is a huge factor when you're planning outdoor activities. Some of the things that I'm talking about are stuff that I experience, so I know more than likely if I'm experiencing it, other amputees are experiencing this also. And the first thing is weather conditions, and that being when it's hot. So, you know, you're outside doing activities, it gets really hot, it's humid, especially if you live in the South, and you sweat a lot. Well, as an amputee, you know, we have to wear devices that are very thick. They have a lot of gel, have fabric on them, and our prosthetic sockets are typically made out of carbon fiber, and those materials can retain heat. And throughout the hotter months of the summer, heat rash is one of the few areas that we have problems with. Um, Basically, when it's hot and humid, our prosthetic legs are not breathable. So all of that heat is getting trapped inside of the socket and the gel liner that you are wearing. And without having any airflow, all that heat traps inside, we sweat, we get moisture in there, and that wreaks havoc on our skin. And I'll show you a couple quick pictures here of what I battled this year kayak fishing when it was really hot and humid, and I developed a heat rash, which is very, very painful. So I'll show you those images right now. And the only way that you're really going to heal a heat rash is you've just got to remove your prosthetic legs, let it air out, and sometimes you have to put medicine on those. And when you have to do that, that's called downtime. And as an amputee, downtime is a big negative. For an amputee to be active, you have to continually be going and crafting these prosthetic legs. So I find that if I get a heat rash, I try to manage it. I just cannot stand the thought of pulling my legs off and sitting around and not doing anything all day long or on the weekend when we have good weather. So those are some painful challenges that I battle through because I enjoy the outdoors so much. The other thing with weather we have to take into consideration is rain. Um, Most of our prosthetic components are waterproof. Um, some are even saltwater proof, but most of them are not. So saltwater activities are way different. And if you get saltwater on your prosthetic components, a lot of times you have to rinse those off with regular water so those components do not corrode. But someone that kayak fishes quite a bit, I have to be very mindful of the weather because if it's going to rain, that means I'm going to be out in the elements. My legs are going to be getting soaked, and I'm going to have to either change things out or I'm going to have to dry my prosthetic components and my legs. The other thing to consider is when it rains, that packing on extra water creates more weight. And these prosthetic legs are already heavy enough. Mine on my above knee side is about 8 or 9 pounds for everything. And on the below the knee side, it's about 5 or 6 pounds. So when you consider you get used to walking with that amount of weight and you have water just filling up inside of your prosthetic legs, that's going to be additional weight that you have to take into consideration. Now, on the reverse side of that, we'll talk about cold weather. Since we're getting into hunting season right now, it's still pretty mild. We've had 60-degree mornings and close to 80-degree, a little bit of humidity now, but not terrible. But in the next month or two, we're going to start seeing temperatures dip down into the freezing range, and we're going to hit those highs that are in the 30s, maybe 40s during the day, and sometimes dipping into the teens for the lows. And prosthetic components, when these things get cold, the cold transfers through the real part of your leg. And that can create a big issue. Last hunting season, every part of my body I could keep warm except for my prosthetic legs. These gel liners get really cold and they get stiff. So imagine losing feeling in your foot from, you say you're sitting, scissor crossed, and you go to get up and your foot is numb and you can't feel to stand and can't walk. Well, that's some of the things we experience all the time with prosthetic legs. So when we're sitting in the blind in the woods for hours upon hours and that cold is transferring through our prosthetic feet all the way up into our sockets, our stumps get really, really cold, and it takes forever to get them warmed up because these things just stay cold. And one of the things that I started doing last year to help combat this is hot hands. So late fall, I will start stocking up on the hot hands, and I activate those before I, travel to go hunting. And I will just get some black tape and I will tape those around my prosthetic components. And it helps keep a level of heat in those so those do not get severely cold. One instance last year, I forgot my hot hands and I was hunting and it was really cold. My feet are on the ground and that cold started transferring. And when I stood up to walk, I literally could not feel my legs. And I had to pull everything off and just rub my stumps until I could get enough heat so I could feel to even be able to walk. And then when I went to the truck, turn on the heated seats and the heat for the floor to get some air moving, and I had to get my legs warmed up before I could even drive. So that is a huge challenge that we have when it starts getting cold. And the cold weather can cause your skin to get really dry, and when it gets dry, it can crack. So that means more moisturizing lotion at nighttime. So there's a big regimen that goes into this when you're an amputee. Hey, while you're here, if you don't mind, hit that like and subscribe button, give me a follow. Your support means everything to me. So the next thing I want to touch on is the different types of terrains that we have to face when we're in the outdoors. And this especially is for hunting and fishing. So I do a lot of bank fishing and also do a lot of kayak fishing. The kayak fishing is not as bad because I try to use public launch access. So, typically there'll be a gravel boat ramp or a paved boat ramp, and it's not as bad. But when you get to those areas where it's not paved and you're going to have more wet, muddy situations, that makes it harder to launch kayak. For me, I pack a lot of equipment. I've got multiple rods, my fishing backpack, camera equipment. So I've got a chair that I normally sit in. So it's multiple trips from the vehicle to wherever I'm bank fishing. And, around this area, I live in the Tennessee mountains. So there is nothing level around here. And a lot of the areas that I go to, there's not a lot of good access to be able to get down to the water. So I'm walking on those slope terrains, tree roots sticking out. If it's rained the night before, the ground's going to be a little bit slick, softer, and it can make it challenging trying to get down close enough to the water to be able to fish. So those are things we have to take into account when we're bank fishing, is how are we going to get down to the water without falling and killing ourselves. For hunting, I think it's a little more challenging for me because a lot of times you're walking in thicker environments. So you've got weeds and bushes you're going through, there's hidden tree stumps, things sticking out of the ground. And when you're walking, you have to pick up your legs more, which makes it a little bit more challenging because now with all the equipment that you're packing, you're trying to pick up your feet and navigate through things that you can't even see on the ground. And a good comparison here is someone that is normal when they're walking, and we'll just use a big field for example. If you're walking through a field and you step down in a hole, your foot has tendons and ligaments and muscles and the joints that bend a certain way. You're able to control those through using all of those things. And you can use your other leg to kind of take pressure off of your foot being down in a hole to safely navigate that without falling. When someone has a prosthetic leg, our feet are more stiff and there's not that natural movement that you get from a real foot. And so when I'm walking, my heel hits here and all of that energy comes down and it's stored in the heel. So we don't have this regular flex in the foot like a normal foot. Our foot is more stiff like this, and we roll through our step. So as we hit the heel, we absorb that energy and we start rolling through that step. That energy is expelled when we go to toe off. And that's how we get a lot of that energy return when we're walking. The challenging part is when you're walking and you hit a hole, that stiffness doesn't disperse through the foot. So if I step heel first into a hole, I'm basically going to take the brunt of that through my knee and down into my stump. There is no giving there like a normal leg. And a lot of times that puts extra pressure, get very painful spots on your stump just trying to navigate, just walking simply through a field. You know, the other thing is if you're walking and you don't pick your feet up good enough, your toe could hit something sticking up and it could cause you to trip and fall. And this happened to me last year hunting on a farm. It had rained a couple days before I went hunting on a doe day, and there was a little bit of red clay transition from where I park over to start walking the grass all the way back to my blind. And I thought I stepped far enough to clear the red clay, and my heel hit that red clay. And yep, I went down like a heap and wound up falling on my backside. I had red mud all up and down my back. And when I knew that I was falling, my first thing was make sure I do not bump my gun because I did not want to knock my sights off and get my scope out of alignment. So basically I took the brunt of that on my backside all the way up through my back, and I was pretty sore for a few days. So that's an instance where, you know, not being able to feel that ground good when we step, once that step initiates, it's happening no matter what. Another part in that is, you know, when it rains, it frosts and it starts getting, you know, leaves are on the ground and sometimes maybe a light snow. That's more slick terrain, and walking on that a lot of times with a stiff foot, it is hard to get traction and it makes it harder to navigate some of the terrain that you're walking on. So with prosthetics, we exert more energy taking a step than someone that has two real legs. So for instance, if you walk a mile, it may take me the equivalent of walking a mile and a half to walk that same distance because I'm having to exert more energy using my prosthetics. Now, put that in hunting or fishing scenarios where we're walking on uneven terrain, up slopes, down a hill, and we're having to control our steps more. We're using twice the energy that someone with normal legs would use just to be able to do the same activities. So as hunting and fishing, you know, when you take into consideration all those aspects with terrain, a lot of times it takes a lot of pre-planning to be able to plan a hunting trip or a fishing trip to make sure that A, you're going to be able to access the area to do those activities, and B, that you're going to be able to safely navigate doing it to be able to enjoy it. And the one thing I've learned from many years of doing this is you just have to be smart. I just take my time. I try to look ahead. I plan ahead accordingly. I watch weather. I check temperatures. So all those factor into me doing activities so I can do these safely. And sometimes there's just going to be physical limitations that will prevent an amputee from doing certain things. You know, one of the things that, like for me hunting, is I hunt a lot from ground blinds. And the reason being is tree stands. I can climb in a tree stand with two prosthetic legs, but I find it to be harder because, you know, not feeling those steps when you're climbing up and down, you're solely relying on foot placement, and that just comes from muscle memory. So me climbing out of a tall tree, I'm reaching my leg down and trying to feel if my foot is on the step, but that doesn't mean that it's perfectly on the step. And, you know, a couple times when it's been slick, I've stepped and, you know, my foot has slipped on the step. So, you know, and I've got a good hold on. So, you know, tree stands are harder. You know, if you're hunting public, think of the steepness, some of the areas that you're going to have to walk up and down. It's definitely going to be more slick. It's going to take way more energy to get up in elevation, walking through thick stuff and stepping over branches, trees, and rocks. And a lot of times you got mossy areas where it's super slick. So all that factors into how amputees navigate certain terrains. Um, I have reached out to a company to see about maybe adapting some climbing sticks for an amputee. So I have always wanted to try saddle hunting, but with current saddle setups with the sticks, I don't think it would be very easy or manageable because the foot placement on those sticks is not very wide. For an amputee, we need a wider base to be able to climb because when we're climbing, we're usually using our toes, and a lot of that stress goes through our knees, and we're using a lot of upper body strength to be able to pull ourselves. So I reached out to a company to see if there is a way possibly for them to incorporate having a wider base to be able to place the foot on. And I want to try saddle hunting, and with proper stick setup, I think that could happen. But those are some of the other limitations that we may face, is being able to climb in and out of trees and strictly relying on a ground game, which is what I've had to do over the course of my life while I've been hunting. A lot of people that know me, continuously tell me that, hey, you walk really good. And if you wore jeans, I wouldn't even be able to tell that you had prosthetic legs. Well, this is a lifetime of mastering these walking sticks. It doesn't happen overnight. It's something you continually have to work after, just like, shooting a gun or shooting your bow. Practice makes you perfect. And that's how prosthetic legs are. You have to stay at it. It's something you have to do every day. And there's days it sucks. There's days you wake up, you hurt, you have skin conditions, and you've got two options. You can sit on the couch and complain about it, or you can get up and just make life happen. And that's kind of how I live every day. So I get up no matter how I feel, the same time every single day, 5 a.m., even if I'm not working and I'm not doing activities, I keep the same routine. Because as an amputee, it's about being in a routine. It's about keeping yourself active and pushing yourself. So that's why I keep the same routines and I push myself every day. Because I know there will come a day when my legs start to give out on me and they start to break down to the point where I'm not going to be able to do these strenuous activities that I'm doing. So while I can do them at this point in time, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I can do them. If you face a challenge, and if it's not even prosthetics, if you have prosthetic legs or some other form of inability to do things, leave me a comment below and let me know what that is and how you face those challenges. If you know me, I hate the word disability. I do not like the word because to me, disability is when you are able to do nothing. So I like to use the word ability challenged. So it's a challenge to be up and able. And I do not like the word disability. So you will never hear me say my disability prevented me from doing anything. If I'm not able to do it, that means A, I need to work harder to do it, or B, I just physically will not be able to do it. The one thing I find sometimes is, when using prosthetic legs, for me, it's more of a mental mindset than a physical mindset. A lot of times I will just think of things and I will just overplay it in my head. Am I going to be able to do this? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? So a lot of times it becomes a mental struggle. And then when you finally try something and you can do it, it becomes more of a shift to a physical struggle of trying to master it. So a lot of times my mental mindset will play a key part in kind of bringing me down back to earth a little bit. So in closing, I just wanted to offer a little bit of encouragement. If you're an amputee, keep at it. The outdoors doesn't care how you get there. The outdoor cares that you're there. And ever what you need to do to be out in the outdoors and enjoying life, do it. Enjoy the outdoors, get out there, do it, and have fun doing it. If you don't mind, hit that like and subscribe button, give me a follow. See you this hunting season. Been out here over an hour and my leg just fell off. I'm sitting on the truck bed. My leg is down there. I'm screwed.